Welcome back to Built on Blues. I'm Graham Bricks. Today we're looking at the industry from the other side of the table. You guys know the drill. You build it, but who sells it? And more importantly, who refers you to the work? I've got Alison Alston from Lodestone Real Estate in the studio. She's not just pushing paper, she comes from a background of flipping homes, managing renovations, and dealing with contractors daily. We're going to talk about why some of you guys are getting the referrals and why the rest of you are getting ghosted. Alison, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Graham. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to have you on. I want to jump right into the history. You weren't always
Yeah.
in real estate. You came
No.
from high-level fundraising and philanthropy, but I read that you actually got your hands dirty flipping homes with your family. Tell us about that transition, how you go from the boardroom to the job site and finally owning Lodestone.
Yeah. So my dad was a contractor, fifth generation, and him and my mom were, really my first example of entrepreneurs. My dad took over the business from my grandfather when I was younger, and the two of them started investing in properties. And so their first one was a long-term rental. They had a few of those. They started doing some vacation rentals and they started doing these fix and flips. And it's funny because if you ask me as a kid, I hated real estate. I remember spending every spare moment on the weekends. My parents would be going someplace and be like, oh, there's an open house. Let's just pull in and look. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to go through another house. This is the worst. But looking back now, I laugh because had I not had those experiences, I don't think I would be where I am today. But when I was a teenager, my parents were always very much like hard work, hands-on, education. You've got to put in the effort to get something out of life. And so my sister and I, we would go on some of the projects with them and we'd help with demo. And then we started, learning how to do framing and drywall and painting and everything. My dad will tell you to this day, he thinks none of us are talented enough to paint. We don't do it the right way or we're too slow, so we
Yeah.
always laugh. My husband and I are fixing up a 1905 bungalow right now. And my dad still comes through every time and he checks the paintwork and he's like, oh, there's a drip here, that. But
Yeah.
it was really great experience. And I'm fortunate because my parents were really great about sharing the financials behind everything. So they explained how it worked. And that's what kind of started to get me interested. I was the kid that saved every dollar. We had summer jobs from 14 on, and I would just bank and bank and bank that money. And I just always, I enjoyed doing stuff with my hands. I think for me, the transition came because growing up, the realtors that my parents worked with and just going to the real estate offices, all of the realtors, and I apologize if any of these people are still alive and hear this, but they were really old. And it was like a third career or, a empty nester and they're bored. And it just seemed more like a hobby than an actual career to me. And so that was my impression of it. And then I was working at a school in Greenwich, Connecticut, and doing fundraising there. And I came across a parent who was a very successful realtor. He had done commercial for 20 some years and then switched to residential. And I asked if I could shadow him and sit down. And I was getting to the point. I had been I had been fundraising for 10 years at the time. And I just, it was the same cycle over and over. And I was kind of like, do I want to do this for 40 years? I don't know. And I had started getting that bug and I had started going to open houses voluntarily. And I was like, all right, something's coming. So I went and followed him around. I really enjoyed it. And then the link pin was I had a job offer to go down and do fundraising at UVA. Incredible program. President I respected tremendously. Great group of people to work with. But ultimately, I sat down. My husband and I had been married about 6 months at the time. And I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore because it meant traveling and being on the road 4 to 6 days a week. And it just wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself. And so my husband looked at me and he was like, well, what do you think you want to do? And I was like, well, I definitely want to move down south. I want to get out of the cold and the winters of Connecticut.
Yeah.
I went to school down south. I loved it. So I was like, let's just pick up and go. And I was like, I think I'm going to get into real estate. So we were able to transfer with his job down to Charlotte. I got my real estate license. Back then, you had to sit in person in the classes. It's hilarious that that's not a thing now.
Yeah.
And then I joined Lodestone as an agent on the team, actually. So I
Okay.
spent 2 years as an agent on the team. And then the owner at that time, and I sat down and had a conversation and she was ready to make a transition and start running a coaching program. And, she was like, "Do you want to buy the team for me?" I thought she was crazy for a second. I think a lot of people did. But we talked through it more and more. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm ready for this. And so that's kind of how it all got started.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's really cool to hear, the story of you with your parents going through the open houses and, you going from, my God, I hate this to
Yeah.
now
It's
it's
like
what
my
you
favorite
do.
thing ever.
Yeah, it's your favorite thing to do, right? No,
Yes.
it's really funny how situations like that occur.
Yeah.
I want to go into talking about how you run your business at
Yeah.
Lodestone. You're dealing with a lot of high-end clients in Charlotte. Deadlines and closing dates, chaos is the default state. How do you structure your day-to-day operations to keep the train on the tracks, and do you have any specific structure for your team?
Yeah. So I'm a big systems and processes person. I try not to live in chaos. I try to control the machine as much as we can.
Yeah.
A big part of it is we use a transaction coordinator on every single closing. And we always want to have that backstop to make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, everything is timely delivered. We actually set up our processes so that everything should be done 3 days ahead of when it's due. And so if you're getting that calendar reminder that you're at that 3-day deadline, you're behind in my mind. So I'm like, let's hurry up and get this going. I did that because of some of the ways the timelines are structured in North Carolina. It's very different than real estate in the Northeast. Everything is very, very much time is of the essence down here.
Oh, yeah.
So that becomes really important. I think it's also just learning how to streamline a lot of what you're doing. So I do a 90-day audit. And this is something I started about 2 years after I took over the team. Every 90 days, I sit down and I do an audit on our technology and I do an audit on myself. And I take a look and I just keep a running notes list up on my computer screen. And I'll type in, okay, here are the things that I'm doing repetitively. I I used to hand those over to an assistant and say, okay, these are the things that I'm finding myself spending a bunch of time on. This is not my highest and best use. So here, let me pivot. I'm going to hand this over to you. And then it's something that I would then take and teach my agents and explain to them. All right, here's the things that I'm finding myself doing. Are you in the same boat? Let's talk about how do we delegate? How do we shift some of this stuff off? Right. Because as a realtor, our number one focus should always be client facing, right? We should be doing things to actually move the needle to get them the property they want and sell the one they don't want anymore, right? That's our number one thing. I think a lot of us get bogged down with busy work and the paperwork and all of that stuff for people to handle this, right? Just
Oh, yeah.
delegate and get it off. And then since AI, it's been a game changer for me. I've been using that for the last few years because I'm able to now take a lot of those things and use AI to automate it. So, for example, I use a program called Fixer AI, and that automates it. It does responses to all of my emails. Now, I go through and I proof them, and I usually tweak them and personalize them a little bit, but that saves me hours every week. It auto files some of the junk email and unsubscribes and
Hmm.
gets that stuff out of there. And I've also started recording all of my meetings. And so to me, that's been the biggest benefit because then I can take that AI summary and know, okay, here's my client's next steps, here's mine. And before we leave, I always tell my agents, you set a meeting from the meeting. You do not leave that current meeting without setting a date and an appointment for the next one. And it's part of those systems that I think have made us as successful as we've been.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just having systems in place, not only in the business, but how you're saying for yourself, just like you did a 90-day audit on just like yourself. And, to me, I find that super important as well, just because, when you are first starting up, running a business, it's good to have, that mindset and those systems in place for when you do start your own business or when you are running a business, you can implement those systems and strategies to your team so that, it's cohesive and you are guys are working together, for the common goal.
Yeah.
You guys are using a lot of AI tools. I know you mentioned that it's called Fixer for your
Hmm.
emails. Are you using any other AI tools, for like managing leads or
We
automated
use a few
follow-ups?
things. So we use, obviously ChatGPT.
But yeah.
I use that quite a bit. Writing listing descriptions, things of that nature, stuff that we'd sit there and agonize over the words
Hmm.
because you get to a point as a realtor that you're like, if I read this word one more time, right? My word of 2026 that I've banned, the girls laugh. I ban a word every year because I'm just like, I can't listen to it anymore. I'm
Yeah.
like, if anybody puts the word boasts in their property description, you're off. We're
Out.
done. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't listen to it. But so we laugh about stuff like that. But ChatGPT is a big one we use. We also are using a newer company. It's a startup called Jack Ryan AI.
Hmm.
So they've been incredible. They created custom AI bots for us. So one of the biggest struggles in real estate is everyone has decided along the way that it's supposed to be this 24/7 business. And I'm like, that's not healthy.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not a great way to live your life. And it's definitely not going to give your clients the best when you are just burnt out because you're on 24/7. And I say this from experience because I did this to myself. And then a few years ago, I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I started controlling some of it with my clients up front. So my sellers, for example, I always tell them, listen, I don't think it's actually a very smart idea to be deciding the largest financial investment of your lives at 8, 9, 10, and so forth at night. Let's set a deadline for this is the latest we're going to talk and have a conversation. And here's where we're going to pick it up the next day. So
Yeah.
I know if any offers are coming in, they're going to be there in the morning. Let me communicate this to the listing agents so they're not blowing up my phone, right,
Oh yeah.
all night long, because it's just not a great idea. And it gives us that family time and the balance back in our lives, and it makes us stronger as agents, in my opinion. So, one of the things we ran into is you have clients that call at off hours. Some people work different shifts, right? Some people are in different states, different countries that we work with. So, how do we accommodate that stuff and still get some balance? So, one of the things we introduced was an AI caller. And so, this way, our phones are answered 24/7, but the person can get a bulk of what they need information wise through the AI bot, and then know that a human, one of us on the team, is
Yeah.
going to follow up with them as soon as our business hours start the next day. Jack's company has gone ahead and created 3 bots for us now. So we have a buyer's agent one for Lodestone. We have a seller one for Lodestone. So that way, if people call in about a specific property, they can get a lot of that property information directly from the bot. And then we have a third one that we're almost done building out. But that one is coming for a company called Finca Living that I'm a partner with. And so that has to do with steel homes and actually creating residential solutions for people.
Yeah.
And so that bot takes people through, okay, well, what are you looking for? There's so much that AI can do. I think the key thing, I know a lot of people are terrified and they're like, oh, it's going to replace humans. And yes, in many roles, it is definitely going to, but I think it's also opening up a lot of new opportunities. And I think it's creating ways for us to eliminate some of the mental bog down, I'll call it, for lack of a better term, so that we can free up our brains to actually have the time to go back to creative thinking and brainstorming and thinking outside the box and trying to come up with solutions. I think it came up because me and a couple of buddies that all work in different industries, we're all coming across the same issue and we wanted a better quality product. And because I started using AI a few years ago, I actually had some time back in my schedule
Yeah. You already
to be
knew
able to spend
about
time
it.
doing this.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it's a really important tool.
There was one question that I thought of that I really wanted to ask. Before you went with Jack's AI, would you say that like you were almost like bombarded with a bunch of different like AI things? Like like I
So
f
many
right?
companies.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's just
Yes.
like I know it's a problem, especially right now. I hear a lot of people and business owners alike that are wanting to use AI, but they're struggling to know almost which AI to use. How important would you say was it to go with just Jax, where they're like, hey, we'll build this for you.
Hmm.
So, now you can worry about your business and, like you said, delegation of tasks. Like, I would say
Yeah,
that's almost like giving someone a task. I know it's hiring somebody on, but like you said, like, it was super important for your company because now you are able to take that time to spend with your family rather than being like, "Oh, sorry, like in the middle of dinner, I want to take this call at 8 p.m."
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this I would say goes across the board for me, whether it's an AI company, a website company, whoever you're hiring, you've got to decide what is the most important value for you with who you're going to partner with. And I've had some people tell me I'm absolutely ridiculous for taking this all the way through my tech companies. But to me, I need to believe in the product, but I really need to believe in the people I'm working with.
Oh yeah.
So, it started with Lodestone and hiring my agents there. My number one requirement is not any kind of experience. You've got to be a good human because to me, you can't teach that. And if you're a good human, no matter what the situation is, 99.9% of the time, I am confident you're going to do whatever is truly in the best interest of your client over your own. And that to me is really important. And same thing with tech. So for me, I interviewed quite a few companies. I actually worked with another company to start who helped me with just kind of automating the tasks and partnered with a phenomenal woman, Samantha, out of South Africa, actually. And she was great because she helped me explain what was possible and what wasn't, and kind of what made sense for automations through AI versus what really wasn't quite an AI thing, or at least not yet. So that was helpful. But in interviewing the companies, I wanted to have a good connection with the person. And so it had to be somebody that I knew I would feel comfortable picking up the phone, asking questions, someone who is going to be available to answer those questions, because whenever you adopt new technology, there's always a learning curve. And so you need somebody who's going to be there. And I was like, I don't want a chatbot. I want a human. So that was kind
Hmm.
of my first thing. And the second thing was I really enjoy supporting other small business owners. So I have some large companies that I work with, like our CRM is a large company, but overall, most of our stuff tends to be on the smaller side because I really enjoy trying to support other people. And that was something that really stuck out for me with Jack Ryan was their company. They were very honest and upfront. They're like, we're newer, right? We've been doing this, but we're not 15 years in seasoned pros, but here's some references. This is what we can do. And they were also open, to exploring and experimenting. Like we had a conversation about the Finca stuff, and they were like, we've never helped anyone sell steel homes before. So we're going to have to work with you a little bit more on what those
Yeah.
questions are and have some more engagement back and forth. And it's going to be a little bit more of a lift on my end
Hmm.
than the other stuff. And I'm like, that's okay, right? So just that honesty and transparency up front. I feel like people need to take the time to interview companies and ask them, who am I going to be working with, right? If I have problems, who am I going to get in touch with? Because if it's support at 123gmail.com, it's probably not going to be your best fit if this is brand new
Exactly.
technology, right?
Yeah,
So I think that stuff's really important.
for sure. Going to that back to that human connection and that honest and transparency. I value that a lot too, where it's, you want to have that face-to-face connection when you're building something with someone. There's a
Yeah.
lot of these companies out there, they're just like forcing down, like, I'll build you this, I'll build you this, or like, I already have this in place, I already have this in place. I was like, what about, why not we work together to build something that's going to help you move the
Yes,
bottleneck?
exactly.
A huge part of our audience, I would say, are contractors, general contractors, roofers, HVAC guys. When you're looking for a referral or contract to a client or hire one to flip, what is the number one thing that makes you, not go with that contractor? Would you say it is missing that call?
I think I tend to be a little bit more patient than most people with that.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, the whole notion of people being available 24/7 has just not picked up with me. There's a few industries where I'm like, okay, we want that
Yeah.
call back now. But usually those tend to be more like help service oriented.
Yeah.
But I think, for me with contractors, it's because of my background. I can tell when someone's feeding me a load of baloney
Yeah.
versus when they're not. And so, one of the things I'll do is whatever the project is that I know my client is looking for help with. So let's just say if they're doing a kitchen remodel, right? If I call a contractor and they tell me they're available tomorrow and they're going to have this thing done in 2 weeks and we're going to be off to the races, I am immediately like, we're out,
No. Yeah.
right? Because I'm like, that is not humanly possible.
Yeah.
And like just the permitting and everything alone is going to take at least 2 weeks. So I think it's just, contractors being mindful of giving honest answers. And I feel like it's a really difficult position for them because we are in a society where a lot of stuff in life is instant gratification, right? I mean,
Hmm.
Amazon has certainly changed the game dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think people expect, I decided I want to remodel my kitchen. Well, I'm going to have a contractor here tomorrow. I'm going to get all this stuff together and this is going to be done before the holidays hit, right? And it might be
Never is
October
that way.
1st. And you're like, okay. So
Yeah.
I think contractors can do a really good job and be a phenomenal partner for realtors. by being honest about the process. My clients laugh because whatever the contractor says, the second they step away, I immediately add a week to that and give them a buffer. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, we're going to.
Mm-hmm.
So doing that, I think being transparent about the pricing and how it's set. A
Oh, yeah.
lot of people don't understand where the pricing comes from. They don't understand the dynamic nature of supplies, right? I mean, lumber during COVID was absolutely insane with the up, down, and the cost of that. And, labor, supply and demand, everything changes constantly. So I think the more transparent they can be, the better. I think that's kind of the number one complaint. And then I'd say the second thing is communication. A lot of my contractors, I love them to death, but they get to a certain point and I'm like, okay, it's time for you to hire a friend,
Yeah.
somebody to coordinate and handle your schedule that you will check in with because we all know things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they might show up to a house and think it's an hour job, and all of a sudden it becomes 3. Well, that's fine. But if I'm expecting you to meet me at another property and you haven't communicated to me, you're running 2 hours behind, that is going to be really
Problem.
frustrating for the clients and for myself. And so I think that's something that they can really do a great job with. I know my lead contractor, I've been working with him pretty much since I started because his communication is fantastic. And um, even, one of my interior designers I work with all the time, she just called me the other day to let me know her contractor has the flu and she's doing work for one of my clients right now. And she was like, I've already let them know, but he's obviously going to be delayed. He was supposed to be there this week to start. And I'm like, okay, no
Thank you
problem.
for letting me
Right.
know, right? Instead of
Exactly.
just not
Yeah.
saying anything.
Exactly. And so then I was able to call my client and say, hey, I heard it got pushed back a week. I'm so sorry. And they're like, that's okay. They already communicated it to us. We totally understand the flu's going around. Rather him be healthy than show up. And I'm like, exactly. Right. So I think people can be a lot more understanding when things are
When you're open and
communicated.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Keeping that line of communication as transparent
Mm-hmm.
as possible to being like, we're all human at the end of the day.
Yes.
So there are going to be things that come up in our lives where you'd be like, hey, like, I apologize, but realistically, I won't be able to make this deadline or I won't be able to do that because
Exactly.
of A, B, C reasons. Moving on to the market and the industry in
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte, going to the next, I want to say 12 to 24 months. Do you think there's going to be more integration between tech-heavy brokerages and tech-heavy builders?
That's an interesting question. 12 months, no. I don't see a huge shift in 12 months from the contractor side.
Hmm.
In speaking with a lot of the local vendors, they're just starting to get on board
Into
with
the
AI
tech,
and
yeah.
scheduling technology and things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower time frame than 12 months as they adopt the new technology, put it into practice and start to get comfortable with it.
Hmm.
I would love to see more integration between the tech brokerages and the contractors themselves. One of the greatest assets for a client from a real estate perspective is having the vendors for those people. And so I think, if you can coordinate that stuff, it's really, really important. We're working on a partnership right now with a construction workforce company that works nationwide. So, in rolling out the Finca product, we're working with them to make sure that they can have crew for us in every single state
Hmm.
because we will be rolling this out through my brokerage later in the year. And so, that's something that I think is going to start shifting. I think 24 months is that kind of 18 to 24 months is a more realistic time frame in my mind as to where adoption is really going to start to pick up and take off. Um, and you'll see a lot more collaboration between the industries. It's always been interesting to me since I started in real estate. The number one pain point for realtors is a great handyman, right? We all need those guys to come in and just do the little punch work to get the house prepped and ready. Our clients just closed and they've got a little list and it's a mile long, but it's all little things, right? And our general contractors are not going to come in and take care of that,
Do
right?
those
They're
little
like,
knick-knacky things, yeah. They
yeah,
got bigger
I'm not
jobs, bigger
installing the toilet paper
projects.
roll holder for your client, right? This is not, this is not what
Yeah,
I'm here for.
yeah,
And so it's been fascinating to me that brokerages haven't come up with their own internal handyman company. To me, I think that's something that is lacking and that they should really be working on putting together. It's a huge resource gain for brokers and it's also a huge
yeah.
resource gain for the clients. And when you create those partnerships, you know, it creates the ability to optimize the pricing and make things in a much more affordable way while also guaranteeing much more steady income for the handyman or contractors.
Oh yeah.
So
It's
I think
helping
there's a
each
lot
other
of
out.
flexibility there.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's I find that really interesting actually. I never would have thought of that where, especially
If you go and
coming
create this
from the
company, I'm taking equity in it.
yeah, okay, sounds good. No, 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 I got my own thing, but for anyone who's listening, you heard Allison, you got to go
Yeah,
talk to
you have
her
to
and
call
message
me.
her, and be like, hey, I did this, help me build it,
Yes. Yeah.
I would say we do have a lot of listeners. Just wrapping everything up to a close here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we got a lot of listeners on the fence, starting their business. Maybe they're a project manager wanting to go solo, or an agent scared to start their own brokerage.
Mhm.
If you could give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur who is terrified to take that first step, what would it be?
Just do it. Get out there and do it. It's terrifying. I remember my first year in the business, I closed my first deal and I got a paycheck for $500. And I had left a really well paid job by the time I had left my industry. And I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, I just made the largest mistake of my life. And I went home and I sat down with my husband and I was like, I'm going to have to sell a lot more houses. And he just started laughing. He was like, it's your first one. Even 90 days in and you've already closed your first one. He's like, you're going to be fine. And I just kind of needed to hear that. So I think, my biggest piece of advice is have patience with yourself. Get out there and just go after it. But have patience with yourself and have somebody in your corner. And it doesn't have to be a family member or a spouse but have someone in your corner who's going to be your cheerleader because that first year, it's brutal. And you don't know what you don't know. So I think that's really important to have a cheerleader to keep you going and finding a great mentor, finding someone who's in that space to really help you troubleshoot and kind of avoid some of those big pitfalls that we run into, along the way as we're all learning. I think
Hmm.
that's really huge. And as far as the second part of your question with agents wanting to start their own brokerage, you may not like my answer on this, but my answer is don't do it. It just doesn't make sense. I have yet to see an individual agent who has been able to create a profitable model that doesn't revolve around them giving up their entire eat, sleep, breathe, drink life
Yeah.
for the brokerage. I actually looked into it myself and I spent a year and a half before I made the jump to EXP going through all of the possibilities. And I just kept coming up and drawing blanks. And when I looked at opening my own brokerage and the overhead that's involved in it and the liability and the financial investment of it and what it would take to recoup that, and in doing it the right way, it just didn't make sense to me. And so I think it's really important for people to take a look at there are hundreds of thousands of different options out there, right? And in real estate, you've got thousands of brokerages to choose from. Take your time, go and interview all of the ones that are out there, big ones, little ones, right? Find your niche and what works for you, because I don't think any of them are one size fits all. But I think it's really, really important to look into those options and set your ego aside and not be set on, oh, I have to have my name on the building, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Glenn Stearns at all.
I'm not.
So very interesting human. Highly recommend reading his biography. But
Hmm.
he started one of the largest, most successful lending companies in the country. And
Okay.
then '08 happened and he went absolutely bankrupt. And then he had to rebuild everything again. And, he shared some personal struggles from growing up in poverty and just having a lot of issues there. And then ended up, he's a cancer survivor. So just had a lot of things a lot of obstacles that really got in his way. But one of the most powerful things that I took away, I had the privilege of hearing him speak, is he's like, I was so excited because I had my name on the side of this building and it was the tallest building in the downtown and everybody driving by, they were going to see my name. And
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, I've made it. And then '08 happened. And I spent the next few months trying to sell off every stick of furniture in that office and getting pennies on the dollar because I had to do whatever it took to be able to survive. And he was like, it was the most humbling experience ever. And I sat there and I took away from that. I think a lot of people, especially in real estate, it is about them. It is about their name. And I think it's important to kind of take a step back and understand you can make a name for yourself. You can leave a legacy behind, but it doesn't have to be your name on everything, right?
Hmm.
And there's power in having a great team and a support group around you, and being a part of a bigger organization where you can collaborate with some of the best humans out there all over the world and learn different things. I would not be where I am today if I hadn't had access to people who were way better than me. I still change up my social circle all the time because I'm like, I want to be the least intelligent person in the room because I just want to keep learning and growing. So I think that's really important for people to take stock of. Whereas if it's your own brokerage, and you're on kind of hard to get that going.
That's some powerful stuff, Allison. Where can people find you to see your listings or maybe ask you for a referral?
The best place is on our Instagram handle at Lodestone REI. Otherwise, they can certainly email me, Alison, ALISON, at lodestonerealestate.com.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on again, Allison. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on Built on Blues with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Graeme. I appreciate it, and it's great connecting with you.
Awesome. And I want to thank everyone who is listening for taking the time out of your day to join us. Keep building, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.